Hey guys, a few things. One, my sister's going out of town for a week, so I gotta watch her house. So there's maybe a little bit of a lull in the videos. But before I take off, we've got some business to get to. In particular, I have some donations, some boxes to go through, and I got some new treasures, and one old treasure that I haven't talked about yet. So let's get to it. Alright, first up we're going to take a look at these guys. I also want to let you know I've switched to 100% manual focus, so I have to keep remembering to check my focus before I start recording. Alright, so this guy I got 2-3 years ago. I think I found it on eBay at a reasonable price. On this one I just got yesterday. These are the Philco clock radios. They came out at the same time as Predictas with similar styling. This one's particularly interesting because it's battery powered. This swivels. It doesn't swivel this way, it just swivels up and down. 2 speakers and a clock in the middle. But what's curious about this is it's battery powered. It uses, I think, 3 D cells or C cells. And yeah, it got corroded. I do have the base for this. I started working on it a little bit. It has this foam that completely disintegrated. The board has been worked on very crudely. There's some broken traces and jumper wires bodged in place. But the bigger issue that's common with these is the motor seizes up. So shortly before this came out, according to my research, somebody invented a flea power DC motor. So for the first time they could make a clock that would last a long time on a single 1.5 volt cell. That's what this uses. Now the problem with them is they tend to self-destruct. There's a very finicky mechanism with a spring. It's got a brush DC motor, commutator or whatever you call it. But it also has a spring. I think that's to help keep the time, a regulator spring. That mechanism tends to gum up, and the spring breaks or coil overwinds, and then it all comes apart. A buddy of mine poked around with it and got it more or less working, but even so, I don't think it's the most reliable thing. So I've been looking for a replacement. Now this has a bunch of gears and whatnot going to the hands and the mechanism. I just want the motor, but all I can find, and they're super common, been around for decades, is the kind where you put a single AA battery in, and it drives a motor directly connected to the gears, and it has hands and everything. They're commonly sold for hobbyist projects and whatnot, super cheap. But those won't fit in here, not without really butchering it, so I kind of shelved this. I love the Deco-y numbers on it. It's a very neat thing. If I have to, I'll just try to get the radio working and maybe just leave the clock. Another common issue with these is the hands break off. So we have the stump of a hand on this side, and this one we just have the little fork. I think reproductions are made. I'm not sure if they're exactly the same as the originals, but they should be pretty close. Now this is the one I just got yesterday. Oh yeah, sorry, and this is a model T1000-124. Rather heavy. There's a lot of metal in that. This weighs less, but this is AC powered. It's tubes. That one is all transistors, of course. Runs on 4.5 volts. This is an All-American 5. So we have a 35W4, a 50C5, a 12BE6, 12AV6, and a 12BA6. And it has a clock, but this is probably a Telecron, AC, synchronous type motor, super reliable. Also very, very stylish. It looks like it has glow-in-the-dark hands on it. Can't confirm that yet. Unfortunately, it has a little bit of damage, and from some other examples I've seen online, this is a common issue. There's a piece of metal foil that's adhesive backed that was stuck on the front with the Filco logo on it. It came up here, and then it got caught on something and bent over. I'll try to very carefully flatten that out and glue it back down. A couple controls here, volume and tuning. With both of these, it's blind tuning. There's no station indicator. You just just go and hear what you listen to the stations. Yeah, there's no numbers or markings on this or anything. The top does swivel this way. It doesn't swivel this way, but just left to right, and it has some neat buttons on top for sleep, radio, alarm, and off. So it is an alarm clock. I think they're both alarm clocks, actually. So very neat things, very collectible, very desirable. Very glad to have both of them. There might be one other model. I don't know a whole lot about these. I've seen them over the years, but they can be a little tricky to find. I'll get to those eventually. They're low priority right now. I just wanted to give you guys a peek at them because they're not very commonly seen. Now, these next two boxes are items that some viewers donated. So I wanted to thank you and give you all a peek at what was sent. This box is a bunch of Zenith bell fuses. I just thought they were bell fuses. I didn't notice the card at first. But Zenith, a bunch of Zenith part numbers. These are for sets that are a bit newer than I typically work on, but I think I do have one set that might use these. Something similar. So this typical sets I work for the 40s, they don't use fuses. But you get into newer sets, 60s, 70s, they started putting these guys in. Sometimes they use circuit breakers, sometimes they use what they call bell fuses. So these are little plug-in fuses to, well, protect the set from overloading. So I got a whole gamut here, all the different fuse ratings. And below that, these are the circuit breaker types. So I definitely have a color Motorola set where this keeps tripping. I don't know if it's because it's bad or because there's actually something shorted out. These are, looks like they're all Workman type. I believe they're all these parts are new old stock. So thank you very much for that. I'm sure at least some of them will come in handy. This is another item that was sent from just out of the blue. Somebody contacted me and said, hey, I have some tube sockets and some other odds and ends. Would you be interested? He sent me some photos. I said, yeah, sure. So, what really struck me about these is the condition. They look like they were just made yesterday. It's a variety pack of tube sockets and some terminals and plugs and whatnot. So some of them like this, these are the kind used in Predicta. They just plop right into circuit boards. And some other various types. 7-pin, 9-pin. Some of this stuff appears to be gold plated. And these guys, they look like polarized AC plugs. So just all sorts of things, little jumpers. And now and then I do come across tube sockets that are busted, especially these phenolic types. So now, potentially, I've got something to replace them with. Also some packs or containers of various connectors, lugs, and such. So, thank you very much for those. I am sure I will find a use for them. Now we come to some stuff that I got courtesy of the Antique Radio Club of Illinois. Some paperwork that they saved for me, and some coils. Let's look at the coils first. These are 4.5 megahertz discriminator coils. If you recall, I have an Emerson 571 TV where somebody just butchered the sound circuit. This is the kind of thing I need if I want to put it back to some semblance of how it was originally. So very cool to have that. And what I thought was especially neat was all folded up inside this was a bunch of paperwork. So the actual coil itself is rather small. But this is a neat thing that back in the day, this is what you would get when you order a replacement part. You don't just get your part. You get all kinds of paperwork. So on this side, we have some advertising for the famous K-Tran, the finest miniature IF transformers, and they list all the different models that they sold. On the other side, application notes, mounting dimensions, and then various types of circuits. You could wire this up. So I'm hoping between all this info, assuming I need to study the schematic, but assuming one of these configurations will work with my set, I'm hoping to use something, either this or something very much like it, to get that sound circuit squared away. Alright, we're just getting started. Also came with this is this stuff. Let's start with this. It's an RCA picture tube product that I color in black and white. This is relatively modern. This actually came from Chicago Viking Sales Corp, 8300 West Addison Street, Chicago, Illinois. Well, and again, they do show roundies, so maybe this is older than I thought at first. Just going by the printing, I thought this might be 70s or something like that, but well, when they're talking 21AX P22s, this is old school, but there are rectangulars. Okay, here, 1965. Okay. So certainly all rectangular black and white, but they still had some color roundies kicking around back then. Oh, and they do go old school. They got 7JP4s, 8DP4. That's what was using that RCA 621TS chassis I just picked up. 5TP4 projection CRT, 29,000 volts. Alright, so this is a quick summary of all the types that they sold at the time and the dimensions and the voltages that they ran on. Basing diagram. Alright, so that's a neat thing to have. But now check out the rest of this stuff. So we have this. Now let's go with this guy first. Also an RCA publication, Television. The Future of the New Art and Its Recent Technical Developments, Volume 2, RCA Institute's Technical Press. So I thought, okay, cool, it's another book about television principles and whatnot. And then I saw what year it was from. This is old, 1937. So we're talking even pre-war RCA TV kind of stuff. So, what of Television by David Sarnoff? So David Sarnoff actually wrote the intro to this, apparently. RCA development. So what this is about the experimental stage of TV development. There's a lot of photos of prototype stuff, hand-blown glass tubes, iconoscopes, and some samples, 60 line 121, 180 line 240 line. In other words, low resolution experimental 441 line. I think that was state of the art in 37. And some neat pictures of all their experimental transmitters and studios. Early transmitter on the Empire State Building. Experimental field test receiver. A few of these still exist. These are rare. So they're trying to figure out. Hey Shadow, you want to say hi? I can think about all this stuff. Look at her nose print on it. Alright. And then when you get into this more, you get. Shadow, get off of me. You get into a lot of stuff about the characteristics of the phosphors and the light sensitivity, frequencies they tried using for transmitting, and they get into optics, tank circuit of a 50 megacycle television power amplifier. So they had to figure all of this stuff out nearly from scratch about how to make TV work. From the cameras to the transmission lines to the transmitters to the receivers to the iconoscope to the kinescope. Iconoscope being the television camera, kinescope being what you view. And we had to figure out how to make a TV camera. And I do studio lighting. That's what this book talks about. Other countries were maybe a little bit further along, but in the United States, 37 was really crude stuff. Show a sample tuner here. Oh, sorry, it's a vertical amplifier. But there was Never mind. Typical one channel television system. So they haven't even worked out how to make multiple channel receivers. They were just trying to get one working. Talk about how to design a television studio. So neat stuff. Speaking of England being further along, the cathode ray tube. This is a British publication. So 1944. So war's still going on, I guess. The cathode ray tube and its applications by G. Parr, A-M-I-E-E. Second edition reprinted with revisions. So a little bit different perspective. England. Oh yeah, and the first edition came out in 37, so before the war broke out. But they also had an edition of 41, 43, 44, so they kept going. So this is also very, very early stuff. They talk about how electron guns work. Some very early primitive oscilloscopes and associated circuitry. How to focus the electron beam. And how to make deflection plates. How to get a nice focus spot on the face of the on the phosphor. And then they get into Lissajous figures. In other words, when you feed in horizontal and vertical signals and you get patterns on the screen, how to interpret what they mean. You know, this is early days. You didn't have nice fancy triggered scopes with accurate readouts on them or anything like that. So you kind of had to have an intimate understanding of how your device worked to get the full use out of it. That is what, may I talk a little bit about television in here? Electrostatic deflection, TV tubes, and all kinds of neat stuff. Typical circuit for magnetic deflection for 405 line television, 25 frames per second. Using a thyrotron. That's really ancient stuff. Ooh, note. Looks like somebody was doing some inductive reactance calculations in their spare time. Alright. Now, this is what really fascinated me. Now, I've seen industry publications and service publications. A lot of them have been scanned and are available, I think, on worldradiohistory.com. But this one I hadn't seen before. Radio and Appliance Journal from November 48. So, typically these magazines, they talk about new innovations in television that were coming out. There'd be ads for test equipment. Maybe some articles on troubleshooting or tips on how to run a TV repair shop or a TV sales shop. But what I found fascinating about this is chock full of makes and models I had never heard of and never seen before, or just barely had heard of before. Now, yeah, Stromberg, Carlson, and Filco, sure, but that's going to change as we go through this. And there's lots of great ads and neat pictures. When we get into Olympic, okay, you may have heard of Olympic before, but that, and we're going to see more of these in here, reproducers. I knew, before I'd seen this, from the early television museum website, they talked about a reproducer, and that there was a rare thing, and just one company made them, and I think they used them in hotels or something like that. But there are several companies advertising them in this. What is it? You'd have your main receiver with the tuner and all that, and these were monitors. So you just feed your detected signal and your sync signals into this, and this would just mirror what was on that. The idea was to have a low-cost second TV in another room. Of course, you're forced to watch what the other person's watching, but hey, it was kind of a neat thing. General Electric. some Emerson. I actually have that. The sensational Emerson Conqueror. It's an FM only plastic radio. Kind of a neat little radio. I don't recall ever seeing that Emerson model TV before. An Admiral. And some neat photos about various trade shows. And Arvin and Bendix. I get the impression from what I saw, and this is an East Coast thing. But then again, there's a 2-page article about shopping the Loop in Chicago for a television. Going to the shopping district, I guess in Michigan Avenue. And you go into various shops and seeing how they set up their displays and whatnot. And, oh, this guy. So then they do a feature article on this guy who ran this shop, Winston Radio and Television. He was famous because he could sell, on average, 40 TVs a day, which I guess was a very noteworthy accomplishment. 1948, so TV was rather new, and TVs were really expensive. So that for Cape Hart, Indiana. Well, this I thought was interesting. It's an article about, for your high-end customers, after they buy a fancy set and get it installed, the dealer actually going to the customer's home and sitting down in their living room and checking out how their TV is working out for them. And that is a rear projection, RCA. They're watching there. And we get into Bendix. And I have that one. I have that in blonde. That's a very unusual radio with doors and push-button tuning. And Bendix in general is not a very common brand. And then we get into Starrett. How many of you have heard of Starrett Television? That's the Ambassador model. Or Major Television. Who the heck has ever heard of Major Television? But yeah, Major Television was a brand. Looks a lot like Mac or Teletone, so I'm thinking it's probably rebranded. Stuart Warner, the Washington. I've heard of Stuart Warner, but I've never seen that model before. And here's another television duplicator, manufactured by Tabor Equipment Company out of New York City. So yet another brand, I've never even heard of that one before. Or this telescope made by Wavell Corporation. It's a magnifier. We're going to see a bunch of magnifiers coming up. Rather nifty antenna. And here's that ad for that Taborn actually took out in here, a Taborn duplicator. And there's a Flextron TV magnifier. Oh, Scott 6T11 rear projection set. Neat. Cost a small fortune at the time. Some ad for a booster to boost your gain. Crosley advertising a refrigerator. A lot of these TV radio makers also made appliances. And here's Mac, a good old Mac. If that's not the model I restored, it's one awfully similar to it. More magnifiers, Hunting magnifying lenses, Hunting Plastic Company. More Flextron magnifiers. I didn't realize they were that big a thing back then. And Transvision kits, TV kits, amplifiers, boosters. And how about a Tom Thumb portable bike radio made by Automatic Radio? $25, which was a heck of a lot of money back then. And this. So, if you recall, I started working on a Norelco protogram, little projection system on wheels you could move around. Another company made them. The Courtly Television Corporation out of New York. Who the heck ever heard of them? None of these may even exist anymore, but it's, from what I can tell with the ad and the dimensions, it's exactly the same concept as the Norelco protogram. DeWalt Television, also high definition television. Yeah, sure, high def. It's a little 7-inch TV. Another brand you don't see too often. So what I'm thinking is, this was probably not that well known a publication, and maybe it was cheap to run ads in it. So the off-brands did the bulk of the advertising. Andrea, ad for a swivel TV table, some notable people in the industry, Skybeam antennas, and that is that. And for Westinghouse in the back. So I haven't had a chance, I just looked at this, is to see, are there other editions of this, and have they been scanned, are they available online? I don't know. I've never seen this publication before, but that was really fun to flip through. I also got an Admiral TV chassis and picture tube tests fair, so that's a good thing. So let's close this out by seeing if the hands on this clock are glow in the dark. I'm pretty sure they're not radioactive. I think by the time this was made, around 1960, radium was no longer being used. Yeah, they do. A little. Not very strong. I think they're just assuming these really are, and I'm just deluding myself. I think they could definitely stand to be freshened up with some glow-in-the-dark paint. Anyways, that's going to be it for now. I hope you found these latest finds interesting. Thanks for watching.